Welcome to the webinar. We're gonna give folks maybe another minute or so or a few seconds to join. We have a decent amount of participants joining today, so let's give them a few more minutes to join before we get started. Thank you. Okay, let's get started. So welcome today's conversation. My name is Ajay. I'm here with Zoe, who will be co-hosting the conversation today. Really excited for you guys to be able to join us in this conversation. I hope that you folks had an opportunity to view the campaign. If not, we'll be looking at it, reviewing again to viewing it again today. So keep your eyes open, and we're open to also get your response. Today's conversation is going to be highlighting one of our most recent campaigns, like I mentioned, which is thinking about how we can look outside the box around masculinity and societal norms. Another aspect of the campaign that we wanted to highlight, more so indirectly, was thinking about how we can prevent online sexual exploitation of young people. And that's a core aspect of the conversation, which is again another part of um, the campaign. So today's conversation is going to be looking at all of those different topics, as well as exploring some of the questions that you might have, the reactions that you might have of the campaign itself. So I want to take the time to thank you for joining us. Really excited to have you today. Again, my name is Ajay. I'll pass it over to Zoe before we jump into the nitty-gritty of stuff to do the land acknowledgement, and then pass it back we'll do some tech update after. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Ajay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Zoe James, Program Manager at White Ribbon. So I'm going to start us off with our land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge the beautiful land on which we learn and teach on today. Since time immemorial, it has been the traditional lands of Indigenous people. We recognize this land is now home to many diverse Indigenous people from across Turtle Island and the world. To honor the Indigenous people of Canada and recognize the historical injustices inflicted upon them, White Ribbon is committed towards the advancement of reconciliation. Towards this advancement, we recognize the importance and the practice of cultural humility. We will work to create authentic and genuine relationships with Indigenous communities and organizations with the intent to provide equitable, accessible, and culturally appropriate services with Indigenous people. We will support Indigenous people with healing, justice, solidarity, and allyship. The road we travel is equal in importance to the destination we seek. There are no shortcuts. When it comes to truth and reconciliation, we are forced to go the distance. The quote by the Honorable Justice Maurice Sinclair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. So personally today, I'm calling in from the city of Hamilton, which is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. If you are joining us today from different areas of Canada, please feel free to share where you're joining from in the chat, and any traditional lands that you would like to acknowledge as well. And I encourage everyone to take some time to also think about the real importance and meaning behind land acknowledgements, and to not let them lose their importance in providing them, right? That we continue to think about the deeper meaning behind them, and not let them become performative. So thank you again to everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to launch this campaign and to share it with all of you. So I'm going to pass it back over to Ajay to do just some tech updates so that everyone is ready to participate.
So thanks, Zoe. So one of the main pieces of this conversation is going to be, I want to say your reaction, but comments and um, reactions to the video and to the campaign. So two of the things that we're going to have open is, one is going to be the chat option. So one of the things that you'll be able to do is to chat throughout throughout the conversation. And then the other one is going to be the Q&A option, right? So those two things are separate. So if you have a comment, drop them in the comment section. If you have a question, you can drop them in the Q&A section. And then we'll be taking up those questions in the Q&A at this Q&A portion of the event. Another piece that's when we're thinking about accessibility and making sure that folks are able to join in to kind of get the information in a good way is going to be the closed captioning. So if you would like to have closed captioning, I sometimes speak fast. I sometimes stumble over my words. So it might not come out clearly. So one of the things that you could do is in the section below in the toolbar below, you can find the closed caption. It's under CC, and that's where you'll be able to get a recording of what we're saying, as well as you'll be able to get a full transcript of the conversation that we're having. So you can turn that on, and you'll have access to those closed captions. The last thing is going to be around just keeping the comments like very to PG and towards the conversation that we're having. So making sure that we're being mindful of the topic and the conversations that we're having throughout the next hour and a half. I'll stop there, Zoe. I think those are the things that I have on my end, and I'll pass it back to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ajay. And just a reminder, if you do have any questions or tech issues throughout the webinar, you can send a message to the Zoom tech host, that is the name, and Davina will provide some support to you if needed. So yeah, let's get started. So what we'll be doing today is we're going to be sharing 2 videos of our campaign, some of our longer form videos from the work that we did. We'll walk you through, the creation of the campaign, the meaning behind it, everything that went into it, and we'll share those. And then we will move into a panel discussion with some of our panelists here today, and just ask some questions maybe that you're thinking of, but we have some questions prepared for them as well. So just have a conversation around healthy masculinity, this campaign specifically, but other forms of preventing gender-based violence and online sexual exploitation. And then we will open up after that to a Q&A portion for any questions from the audience. So to start us off, I'm going to pass it over to CEO of White Ribbon, Humberto Carollo.
Thank you so much, Zoe, and greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm honored to be speaking from Durham region, just outside of Toronto, the home of many beautiful Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island and people from across the world. And it's an honor to work, live, and socialize on these lands. And as an organization, we are committed to support and work alongside Indigenous communities to realize the full calls for justice and healing from both the Truth and Reconciliation Commission recommendations and the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women calls for justice. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. I want to thank the White Ribbon team, Candy Box, all the campaign participants for putting together such a beautiful campaign, a campaign that calls on all of us to challenge the outdated gender stereotypes and harmful social norms that underpin the use of violence and exploitation in our communities, in our schools, in our workplaces, online. We all play a role in challenging these norms and these stereotypes. And this campaign illustrates one of those stereotypes in such a beautiful way, in that, as boys, as young men and adult men, we're socialized to be in certain ways and to accept certain expectations and pressures that are put on us. And so many of those gender stereotypes and those gender norms end up informing how we behave, how the kinds of beliefs and attitudes that we believe in. And we know that many of those behaviors have serious implications on the lives of women, girls, two-spirited folks, LGBTQIA folks. And we need to have, really serious conversations about those norms, about those stereotypes, so that we can rid our lives once and for all of those negative ways of being, and instead adopt and take on healthier, equitable norms and ways of being that are not just good for the folks, the women and girls to us LGBTQI folks who are on the disproportionate receiving end of the violence and exploitation, but norms and positive norms and ways of living that are good for us too, because it frees us up from those stereotypes, from those harmful norms, and it allows all of us to live in authentic um, ways. Let's get to it, and thank you again for joining us today and supporting the work of White Ribbon and working alongside with us to create change. Over to you, Jay. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Humberto. I think one of the things that like I was listening and I was like, you're touching so much on a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today, particularly around how those gender stereotypes, those gender norms can lead someone to cause violence, right? And that's one of the things that we do here at White Ribbon, and some of the things that we highlight in the work that we do, right? Is how do we create that conversation where we're talking about masculinities, we're just deconstructing masculinities in a healthy way, and then we're thinking about how we can find those connections and how to prevent young men from going down that route of causing violence, right? So a part of a part of the conversation today is looking at the campaign and thinking about disrupting those gender stereotypes, those societal norms. Another aspect of the I kind of mentioned it earlier. Another aspect of the conversation is to indirectly look at how we can build awareness around online sexual exploitation. And that brings me to the project that this campaign is connected to, which is the Preventing Online Sexual Exploitation amongst young people, right? So thinking about how we can create that space where young folks can become more aware of online exploitation. And one of the things that the campaign did and does really well is draw folks into, oh, men don't want flowers. What does that mean, right? But the deeper connection is to think about how we prevent and build awareness around online sexual exploitation of young people. So this project came around in a couple of years ago, I think 2020, during the pandemic. One of the things that we saw was the rise in online exploitation of young people during the pandemic, and our work was to find a way to prevent and to reduce and to build awareness of for young people around this topic. So we worked with different partners over the last, say, 4 or 5 years to ensure that our work is targeting and youth have access to our work, whether it might be through our workshop, whether it might be through the different social media campaigns that we put forward, whether it might be through the campaign that you folks are going to be seeing or have seen, um, or it's through different creative strategies, right? So we recently launched a simple online virtual course, which is a symposium for young people across Ontario and Nova Scotia to sign on, learn more about what online sexual exploitation is, as well as how we can prevent online sexual exploitation. And it really, one of the core pieces around prevention, right, is to they support youth in seeing that some of the societal expectation that they see, the societal norms that they see online, they see in our society, can contribute and can lead someone to thinking that a relationship that they have online is real, authentic, right? So thinking our hope and our vision is that by creating this space where young people can talk more about online sexual exploitation and gender-based violence, that they can then too become aware of what some of those signs are to prevent violence. So our work started, it's a continuation, I should say, of the work that we've been doing for a few years. And this campaign is directly related to that work of creating that awareness to call young people, call men into the conversation around healthy masculinity, around gender expectations, around gender stereotypes, as well as to create that space where we can have this conversation in a meaningful and productive way. So I'll stop here, and I'll pass it back to you, Zoe, and we'll get the conversation started. So um, let's get it going. Thank you.
Good. Thanks so much, Ajay, and thank you, Humberto. So yeah, we're here to introduce our Men Don't Want Flowers campaign. And at first, that title may seem a little jarring and may, kind of raise those eyebrows and make us think about that statement in general. Why is our kind of understanding to be men don't want flowers? Where does that come from? Why is that, why is that true? Or why do we feel like that is maybe true? So really what we're looking to do here is to in the work that we do in preventing gender-based violence and preventing online sexual exploitation is to look at the root causes of those those causes of harm. So thinking about the role of gender norms and expectations and how those contribute to gender-based violence and to online sexual exploitation, how our expectations of love and romance, what we consume in media, how that portrays, ours and young people's understanding of relationship or of their role in relationship as well. So thinking about using a topic such as flowers, something that may seem kind of so simple, it's an easy gateway into these conversations to go deeper, to talk more about gender norms and expectations by finding something that we a gender stereotype that exists in probably all of our lives that we've seen day to day, right? So in building this campaign, we've been able to have a lot of conversations with a lot of different people around this kind of concept that men don't want flowers. So that was the goal of this campaign, was to kind of start these conversations with everyone and to be able to invite everyone into the conversation around healthy masculinity and deconstructing gender norms and gender expectations to prevent gender-based violence and online sexual exploitation. So without further ado, we're going to start by showing you the first video of our campaign to dive deeper into it. So enjoy.
Historically, gifting flowers has been a way of expressing our emotions towards someone. Gifting a flower or bouquet allowed the sender to express feelings of romance, care, and community. But today, gifting flowers is coded by gender norms. A man might buy flowers for the person he cares for when he wants to say, "I love you," when he wants to celebrate a special occasion with them, or let them know he's thinking of them. And while it is absolutely normal for men to give flowers, we all have noticed how rare it is for men to receive them. Men are used to receiving tools, digital gadgets, and shaving utensils, but never flowers. In the unspoken codes of masculinity, it is frowned upon for men to show their emotions and open their hearts. Men are not allowed to have all the great things that flowers have symbolized for centuries. As a result, the only occasion in which men receive flowers is at their own funerals. In recent years, we've all seen how some people have been using their online platforms to try and reinforce dated stereotypes about masculinity. They encourage men not to express their feelings, they spread harmful messages against women and the 2S LGBTQ+ community, reinforce unhealthy versions of manhood, target and exploit young people online, and benefit from the sexual exploitation of others. Today, we're encouraging a younger generation of people to challenge these outdated social expectations on masculinity. By challenging these stereotypes that men don't want flowers, we're hoping to spread awareness and invite a younger generation to find their voice to continue the conversation on gender equity and the prevention of various forms of gender-based violence, including online sexual exploitation. Receiving flowers is a gesture everyone deserves. What's your favorite flower?
Perfect. Thank you. So just inviting everyone to please share your reactions, your first thoughts, or in the chat, or if you're starting to have any questions, please add them to the Q&A. But I will pass it over to Ajay to introduce the next portion of our campaign.
Thanks, Zoe. Yeah, I always look back and I'm like, okay, that was good. That was good. As someone listening, always listening to my voice. I'm talking. Okay. So it was great to see, and I hope that you folks got kind of garner a lot of from that comments from that video. That's just a preamble, right? The second video I think is like the cream of the crop. That's where like all the good things happen. That's where we bring a lot of the conversation that we've kind of talked about in the first video in not even say to life, because those are the lived experience of the folks who are talking. So some of the participants, we have five participants who participated in the campaign. And one of the things that always after the first one of the things off the bat, I should say, that was very evident in when we were putting together this the speaker series for the participants, was their willingness to actually be there and to participate, right? We had given them very little details on what we're doing, what it was for, what we expect them to do, and they showed up, right? And then I think that was one of the things that was key, and is key in when you hear their stories and they share their perspective, is that they're invested in doing this work, right? So that's the first thing, and the second thing is going to be the vulnerability that these men showed when they shared their stories, right? So before I kind of jump into the video, I want to give a really big shout out to the five participants, right? So thinking about Abraham Carreno, Aiden Lynch, Chris Van Zyl, Aidan Kwan, and Narav Patel as being the five men that really took this campaign from an idea to the vision that it became, right, into the product that it became. So really want to say thank you for sharing your stories, for showing up, and for being willing to have this conversation. Yeah, so let's get started.
It's a nice space.
Take one, Mark.
What are the reasons you would want to give someone flowers?
It's like a gift that you give to the women in your life.
It's always just been thanks. For my mom, it's always been thanks. For my wife, it's thanks.
You know, I'm East Indian, so celebration.
That I want this person to feel appreciated.
I think they're beautiful and they smell great.
Have you ever given flowers to someone before?
Yeah, the people I've given flowers to most would be like my partners.
I've given flowers to my mother.
My father and I would always go and we'd go get flowers for my mom, and Valentine's Day was always like, that was just how it was associated.
I love you. I appreciate what you've done for me. I'm really gracious. So here's some flowers and to represent that.
Has anyone ever given you flowers before?
No, I don't think so.
You always have flowers in our culture, you know, at weddings and events and stuff like that, but you don't really get flowers a lot in our culture, and it's very weird for a man to get flowers for sure.
No, I don't think so. I suppose maybe as a joke.
Wedding, I wore a corsage.
How do you feel about the statement that men don't want flowers?
If someone said men don't want flowers, well, I would ask why.
I don't see how gender can be, I don't know how gender can play a role here.
I feel like all people like flowers. I would take flowers any day of the week if somebody were to bring them to me.
What flowers represent are a symbol of appreciation and gratitude. I think everyone deserves to feel like they're appreciated.
It's not just flowers, but like anything feminine, this idea of just, you know, there are masculine things and feminine things. I think that is the stereotype, that is the assumption.
Why do you think these stereotypes can have a negative impact on young men?
There's expectations and there shouldn't be as many.
When I think about my childhood and my upbringing, I feel like I was surrounded by stereotypes.
I played a lot of sports, and I think within that world where there's a lot of aggressiveness, toxic masculinity, I did find myself start to drift towards that.
You get labeled a football player and you hear how some football players talk and you think that's the norm. When you're trying to find your way and someone kind of tells you what your way is, you may try to conform to that stereotype.
You're always trying to portray yourself more macho, more manly. And I think that comes with attacks. Bottom line is, you gotta be you.
If they say men don't want flowers, I would maybe ask them, what do flowers represent to you? You would assume that they would also come to the conclusion that men also want appreciation and gratitude.
We all need people to be kinder and understand it's never black and white. There's varying shades of gray. There's lots of different people in this world.
The world will have to accept who you are at times. And when they don't, it's gonna be a real struggle, and that's when courage has to kick in.
Who is anyone on this planet to say that anyone else can't live the way that they want to live?
Amazing. Oh man. Every time I was kind of reading the comments and as we were watching the video, and I agree, like one of the things that always gives me is like this sense of like, I'm gonna say like give me goosebumps, but it gives me the sense of like, yes, when you hear men talk about and share their stories, like it makes me know and see that our work is having an impact, right? And I think that's a key aspect of this campaign that we put together, right? So I'm gonna invite you again to continue to add to the chat. Give us your full, authentic, genuine feedback. And we're gonna have have these close to our hearts as we kind of move forward in the conversation, as well as moving forward for thinking about how we continue to create our campaigns and do our work in a meaningful way, right? So again, add your comments to the comment section, and if you have any questions, you can add them to the Q&A section, and we'll get to them in the Q&A panel section. I want to thank you, and I'm gonna pass it back to Zoe to get us started.
Perfect. Perfect. Thanks so much, Ajay. And thanks for all the reactions in the chat. It's so great to read it. I totally agree with you, Ajay. We've seen it probably 100 times, and every time it still gives me goosebumps. It still brings tears to my eyes. Being able to have been in that space to see that happen live was really, really powerful. So it brings back a lot of those memories. So yeah, thank you to everyone and everyone involved. So moving forward, we are going to begin the panel portion of our webinar today. So we've invited some of the key players in this campaign, some of our participants, to answer some questions and to have a conversation around the campaign, around the messages of the campaign. So I'm going to start by introducing our speakers for our panel. So first, I'd like to introduce Aaron Robson, the senior video producer and the voice behind the camera in our campaign videos. So thank you, Aaron, for joining us today. Next, I'd like to invite and introduce David Garzon, who's the Director of Marketing and Communications at White Ribbon. Thank you, David. Next, I'd like to invite and welcome Abraham Carreno, the Philanthropy, Marketing, and Communications Manager at White Ribbon, as well as one of our participants in our video. And I will also re-invite Ajay as part of our panel today, as well as you saw his participation in our first video. So yeah, thank you all and welcome, and thank you for being here and participating in our panel. I'm so excited to be able to ask you some of the questions around this campaign and to share, give you a chance to all share your stories. So before we begin, just to let everyone know, I will ask some directed questions towards the panelists. However, inviting all of you panel participants to kind of jump in and share and let this flow as a conversation. So to feel free to add to one another or to jump into the conversation. If you have questions for our panelists, please put them in the Q&A and we will make some time for them to answer questions directly as well. So please feel free to share those in the Q&A box. So yeah, so welcome everyone, and is everyone good to get started? Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna start with my first question, which is for Erin. And Erin, so you're from Candy Box Marketing. You help to bring this vision to life and be a big part of it. Again, thank you for that. So I just wanted to give you a chance to ask you, what were some of the things that you learned during the creation of this campaign that maybe were new to you and the work that you do?
Oh, what a great question. But first of all, thank you for having me here and also allowing me to be part of the conversation today. In terms of the question itself, I would say one of the things that I really learned about it was, first of all, a lot of things about flowers, right? I feel like I know so much more about flowers than I did last year. But it was the history behind flowers and where did gifting flowers come from, and where along the lines did it become traditional by societal norms for the person, the male within the relationship, to gift flowers. And surprisingly enough, it's something that dates back to the Victorian era and the language of flowers. And by gifting flowers to somebody, you were almost attaching little secret messages and notes of appreciation, admiration, and love. And it's interesting that we hold something so tight to ourselves today, and it has just been consistent all these years since the 19th century. So by, I would say, using flowers to help push this conversation forward in the campaign itself, it's kind of a really unique thing that we get to take something that dates back hundreds of years and say, why are we still holding this as to today's norm? Why is this something that we still latch on to? And I think that was one of the biggest eye-openers for myself during this campaign.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. I remember really early on and kind of the conception of this, you sharing some of that learning that you had around where did this kind of idea of gifting flowers come from? So it's such a good point to think about, like, why are we holding on to a tradition that is, so outdated or so old, and why hasn't that tradition grown, with the rest of the world, or evolved, to change with the way relationships have changed over time as well. So thank you for that answer. My next question is over to Abraham. So Abraham, I'll give a little context for our audience, but you were new to White Ribbon at the time. You had almost no information. We asked you to join us in filming this campaign, and you very willingly said yes. So we, did our best to keep everything very secret from you for your, authentic reaction. So what was that experience like of walking onto the set and seeing all the flowers? And I'll open that up for Ajay and David too after Abraham, because we saw it in a different way, but we still had our own reaction. So Abraham, over to you.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you for the invite. And you mentioned that I have almost no information. I wanna cross out like the almost part, because I didn't have any idea what was going on. Like literally 1 second before stepping into this space, because this is the exact space we were in when we were filming the video, I didn't know a thing. So the word I'm going to use to describe my experience walking into the set and seeing all these flowers, the word is unexpected, because I didn't know a thing. I didn't know any of the questions. I didn't know what was going on, but at the same time, it felt also like powerful and but okay, I'm gonna use another word. Because I felt safe. I felt it was like a very welcoming space. I feel like it was a space where I can be sincere and like and open. So like I said, it felt like a safe space, and also a place where I could share without being judged. So yeah, like other than unexpected, and thanks for the context, it felt like a very safe space for me. So that's why I'm sure everyone in the team, once you saw my video, understood that I felt, like I said, safe to share my experiences and what I felt, and like to be honest with my feelings toward flowers. So yeah, that was my initial experience on the set.
Thank you, Abraham. Amazing. David, Ajay, do either of you want to share any of your like kind of initial reactions to seeing the set when we arrived at the studio?
I can start. And well, my first reaction was, who decorated this? Because I want them to also work on my place because it looked gorgeous. The space was so well done, and being surrounded by flowers felt really good. I knew beforehand what was going to happen, and so it wasn't a surprise. But just picking up on some of the questions that were asked from participants, have you ever received a flower? It's something that I hadn't even asked myself, right? And so Abraham, after receiving his flowers, asked me that question, and I was like, actually, not really. It was an amazing moment to just like bond as colleagues and just have this conversation on masculinity. Abraham took one of the flowers that he had received, gave it to me, and I was like, wow, this is the first flower that I received in my life, right? So I'm just gonna say it was such a powerful moment. It was healing. It helped us just navigate some of the conversations that unfortunately are not happening enough. So yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, on my end, I think I'm like reflecting back to that time, and I think there's two things I think that comes up for me. The first one is, and David kind of touched on it, like, and I think it's also like outlined in the throughout the campaign, and it's the concept around men and flowers, right? Like David mentioned, we've seen it before, but being on set, being there, seeing all the flowers, seeing the beauty behind it, and then knowing that we're gonna bring men into the space to have this conversation, I think, was one of the highlighting moments, because you walk on set, you see it, you know that the men that are gonna come don't necessarily know that they're gonna be brought into this set, to the space. So I think that that's the first one. The second one, I think culturally. So I'm Jamaican, and Nirav kind of talked about that connection to flowers in South Asian culture, right? And I think connecting it back to like Jamaican culture, we don't normally have flowers. Like the only flowers we grow is like flowers that you like for decorations, right? So I think being in that space, like making that connection, was also like really cool. And then disrupting those stereotypes, right? So thinking about seeing men having a conversation about it, and knowing that men were going to have a conversation about it, was, I think, two of the things that kind of stuck with me and is still with me. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you all. Yeah, I think it was such a powerful time and moment to see our other participants who aren't able to join us today, but even their reactions to the space, right? And I really love that moment in the campaign where Aiden Lynch kind of says, oh, this is a really nice space, right? And just like takes that second to appreciate it. And that was just like his authentic reaction, right? Not scripted, nothing. It was just how he actually kind of felt in that moment. So he, I think that was, yeah, really cool. And to see just the reactions of each individual as well. So my next question is over to David. So David, you've been with White Ribbon for a while now and worked on many campaigns over the years. And I just want, like, what kind of stood out about this one to you, and you know, your kind of first impressions of the campaign overall.
For sure. Thanks a lot, Zoe. And yeah, over the last few years, we've had so many campaigns, and I've shared with the team here. This has to be one of my favorite from all. I think creatively and the concept were fantastic. A way in which I would describe this campaign is perfect timing. Over the last 10 years or so, we've seen a backlash towards progressive ideas, towards gender equity and stepping out of the boxes of traditional gender expectations. And we need to respond to that as a movement, as an organization. And this campaign looks at something that is quote unquote trivial, gifting flowers, and opens up a conversation that is very relevant today. What are those unseen or those invisible gender norms that determine our lives so much, right? It is not so much about gifting flowers or the flowers themselves. It's also about what they mean. It's about vulnerability. It's about emotional connection, emotional expression, bonding with others, right? And how that relates to masculinity. I think this campaign is excellent at saying gender equality is for everyone. And we can all benefit from challenging traditional gender expectations. I think that as men, we do not give enough credit to the feminist movement, queer, trans movements that have led a way of seeing gender in a different way. And so I hope that this is just one more example of many to come, and opportunities in which we can highlight that message of the importance of stepping out of gender norms, of building masculinities that work for us, for people around us, and that are nonviolent. And one last thing that I want to add here is a sense of community, something that came through really vividly through this campaign, is that we have community partners, we have allies that throughout the years have remained in touch with us, have paid attention to our work and want to continue working with us, reaching out to Nirav, to Aiden, folks who we've been working with for so many years. Was so easy. They were on board, and just being able to have that network and role model new ways of thinking about masculinity is really powerful. So honestly, to everyone who's been participating in the chat box and everyone watching this is also an invitation to join us and become engaged with our work, because we want more voices and we want to continue doing this type of campaign.
Amazing. Thank you so much, David. I think it's like so true that, like, you know, this is such an easy conversation and like a easy starting point for anyone to engage with, right? That allows us to kind of go into those bigger conversations, right? So, you know, this is something that anyone can kind of have this conversation around flowers and around gifting flowers, right? Everyone, you know, most people have probably received flowers, given flowers, or thought about it in some way or another. So it's such a good entry point to kind of get into these deeper conversations around healthy masculinity and gender norms and expectations. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out, and absolutely agree with that sense of community that we experienced in putting this together, and yeah, how easy it was to have, you know, people to be willing to participate, you know, right from the get-go. So you know, thinking about those gender norms and expectations, and you know, we saw in the video that all the men that participated had not received flowers prior. So Abraham, a question for you is, what was it like to receive those flowers, and when you got them, and, you know, especially the surprise element to it as well, if you could speak to that.
Thank you, Zoe. I think it was, of course, surprising, but also touching, because I was being asked all of these questions about flowers and receiving flowers and how do I feel about receiving flowers. And then, even then, I felt surprised when I got the actual flowers, because I wasn't expecting them. And then, like, because full disclosure here, I have worked in production on like ads and stuff that for work. And like reality is that we use props when we like interview someone, or like you know, TV and movies are not like 100% real. So what was really surprising is that I got to keep them and took them home. So that's what really surprised me at the end, because I thought that I had to give them back at the end, and I didn't. So that was nice. So, but okay, leaving that aside, I think this whole experience, and when I got to receive those flowers, and when I saw this campaign and how men felt receiving flowers, I think that made me realize how little we let men experience this simple, like in my opinion, simple, experience this simple and thoughtful gestures like this, like giving and receiving flowers. And also, another full disclosure, I have received flowers in the past from friends and partners, but it's not as often, and it's something that you doubt, or you're not sure if you have sometimes you have to ask if that's okay for of course I'm talking about men here, if it's okay for them to receive flowers, because maybe you could hurt them in a way, I mean hurt their masculinity in a way. So it's odd to ask if it's okay to give something that comes from the heart. But that's a whole another conversation. But yeah, that's how I felt about receiving those flowers.
Amazing. Thank you, Abraham. And I'm going to actually shift gears a little bit and kind of ask the reverse question to both Aaron and Ajay, in that, what was it like to, to gift those flowers to other men, and, to kind of have that experience? I think one of my favorite moments in the video is when Chris is, when he says, I'd take flowers any day of the week, not knowing that they were going to show up. So if you just want to, either of you want to speak to what it was like to gift flowers to the participants as well.
Sure, I can jump in here for at least part of the question. I think the speakers in the video did an excellent job of expressing their thoughts and what they feel when they gift flowers. And I think at the core of it, that's really the truth behind everything is that, what do those flowers mean? It's not just you're gifting flowers to somebody, but you're gifting flowers with a message, and there's some thought, whether it's gratitude, appreciation, just letting somebody know that you're thinking of them. And I think that that's the thing that we have to become more comfortable with. Myself, I am very fortunate to have a lot of people in my life who share a lot of those same sentiments. So for myself to gift those flowers, it made me happy, because I was able to share my appreciation and gratitude for the people who dedicated their time to coming in to talking about an important conversation.
Amazing. Thank you, Aaron. Ajay?
Yeah, on my end, it was pretty cool. And the reason being, I know for like different folks gifted different people flowers, but I gifted Chris Benzio flowers, and we've had a prior connection where we're working. He's a part of the CFLPA. So we worked together, I think for a week or two, or if not more, before. And seeing him and how he navigate, he's like, I don't know, he's like almost like he's over 6 feet, like 6'5", maybe 6'7". And being in those spaces with him and seeing how he navigate, how he created space for everyone, I won't not say in spite, but because of his size and his not I don't want to use it as stature, but he's a very kind, loving, caring, compassionate person. He's always trying to make sure you're well, right? So gifting him flowers, I think, was really cool, in the sense that I'm when I say no, don't want to use the word rewarding, but acknowledging the work that he does as a person, to make sure he creates space. He creates a space where everyone is included, everyone is seen, as everyone is respected. So I think for me, it was cool. It was a great opportunity to to acknowledge his work and the work that he does ongoing. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Ajay. Yeah, it's all about that again, those messages underlying, right? The appreciation, right? So in that moment of him being there, but in previous moments of working with us, and same with all of our other speakers as well who have done work with White Ribbon, you know, in previous campaigns or have, you know, partnered in different ways. So being able to appreciate them for not just this campaign, but for all the work that they're doing, the work they're doing in their respective fields as well, outside of White Ribbon, and the advocacy and allyship that they regularly are bringing and showing up with. So yeah, thank you both. Erin, back to you. I know you said you learned a lot about flowers in this process. So what was it like to build this set, and then, you know, hearing people's reactions to it as well?
Good question. I still think about how it actually came together and how we were able to make it happen, because the set itself took about a day to build, but we definitely went into it with a plan, knowing what we wanted to create. And again, what was mentioned before, Abraham, by you, is we wanted to create a safe space. We wanted a space where people were not only able to hear the questions being asked, but be able to understand what those questions were and feel comfortable enough to be able to provide those responses. It's always challenging to approach any sort of shoot with the idea that you might not be able to get the material you're looking for in order to create a message. So when we built that set, we wanted to really make sure that this was a space that people felt comfortable in. In terms of the actual creative direction behind the set, a lot of things that are trending these days is throwbacks and nostalgia, and looking at what was old and how can we make it new. And I thought thematically that tied in perfectly with what we were trying to do. Is we were trying to take something that felt very traditional for some reason and put a new spin on it. So what we did was we took a lot of things that maybe normally felt maybe decadent or felt nostalgic, like you've been in a space similar to this before, and we wanted to make it feel fresh, and we wanted to tie into the theme of flowers. So putting it together came down to 8 hours between myself and a couple of other candy boxers here at our studio in Oakville. It was funny because in the morning, a few team members just saw us, you know, bringing one by one pieces of furniture up the stairs, and there was no clue as to what we were building. Only when it finally did come together did people get to see it, and the reactions were well worth it. It kind of confirmed for us for the day to shoot that we were successful in creating a space that would really catch people's attention and make them feel comfortable.
Amazing. And you and the team did such a good job of creating that safety and that comfort in that space, as both Abraham has shared. And you can see by the you know, the reaction of the individuals in the video and their comfortability and how much they shared authentically. And then just to note, you know, those are the two main campaign videos, but we will continue to share some of the clips of each individual speaker sharing their stories online as well. We will provide those at the end for everyone. But you know, those clips even show even more how safe and comfortable people felt in those spots. So thank you for sharing that. So Ajay, I want to talk more about like the campaign itself and the messaging behind it. You know, in working on this project and thinking about this campaign, you know, what do you think the impact of a campaign like this can be or will be, and how do you see this connecting to a lot of the work that you do? You know, especially that you do a lot of White Ribbon's work with young people and in schools, especially.
Thanks, Zoe. I think that's a great question. And I think the first part of the question, a lot of folks on the call kind of mentioned, right? That shock value, right? Like people see it, they're like, oh, what is just the name off the bat? Men don't want flowers. What is this, right? What is this about? So I think the first thing is that it draw folks who are seeing the name, who is watching it, into the conversation, right? So getting them to click on it to say, okay, what is this about? And then once they see the campaign, they hear about the stuff that we're kind of looking to have a conversation about, is to get them a bit more interested or a bit more invested in having the conversation. So I think in terms of the impact is that it makes folks think a little bit different. I know Aaron kind of mentioned like going back to Victorian era and thinking about flowers was meant for this, and now coming to 2024, flowers is still meant for this, but it could also be XYZ, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? So thinking about how that kind of speaks to our work as at White Ribbon in a sense of like finding that space to create to talk about masculinity in more healthy, more progressive, more impactful, more vulnerable ways. So I think that's the first piece. Like, so opening up the conversation to think a little bit more about flowers, but also to think a little bit more differently about gender stereotypes, gender norms, and masculinity. And then the second one, in terms of like schools, oftentimes when you go into schools and you're having those conversations about masculinity, I think David mentioned the pushback, right? So what we're seeing right now, and from within and from COVID, right, is a lot of online influencers who are sharing certain rhetoric, having certain conversations around how masculinity should be. And when you go into schools, whether it might be elementary or high schools, you're hearing those same rhetoric, right? Young people are still, they're watching, they're seeing, and they're staying and also acting in those acting out the things that they see online. So the second part to that question is to think about how we break the ice, right? How we have have a small conversation that could eventually lead to a bigger conversation. And oftentimes when we have that conversation around gender stereotypes, societal norms, how men are supposed to be, it opens up the conversation for us to talk a little bit more about some of the things that they might be facing, right? And Aaron kind of spoke about the vulnerability and the warmth that you have to try to curate when you're in those spaces, right? And it's that work that this campaign really does well, where if we show this to a young person, a young man, they're gonna just like, yo, what I'm from Scarborough, like they're gonna be like, yo, what's happening here? What's going on here, right? And it's that first step to starting that conversation, into breaking the ice, talking about some of the things that they're seeing online, and making sure that the way that we're doing our work is in line with the things that they're experiencing, right? Whether it might be young or folks who are a little bit older. So I think those are the main things that come to mind.
Amazing. Thank you, Ajay. Yeah, I think this is, so clearly that door that opens to these larger and deeper conversations. But again, that entry level point is so low that everyone can engage with it, that, it can really start that conversation for so many people. So I'm moving into kind of my final questions here. So I'm gonna kind of give this one to everyone. So the tagline at the end of the campaign videos is challenging outdated stereotypes is just a first step towards gender equality. So, thinking about that message, what are your calls to action for our participants today, and overall, what are other steps that they can take to, be allies or prevent gender-based violence in their everyday life, something, that's accessible for everyone at every level of allyship. And, or if you have any kind of final messages around healthy masculinity, what would those be? So, Aaron, I'll start with you because you're first on my screen.
Yeah, what a great question. And I feel like everyone's response is going to be beautifully different, because I think as people, we all are built from the experiences we have in life and who we are and what makes us unique. I don't think the answer is always going to be so black and white as it's been so well put in within the video itself. But I think one of the best things that we can do is always be empathetic towards others and to listen and to understand that everyone's going through their own challenges in life and they're all facing their own I would say hurdles and all that, and the best thing we can do is just do your best to try and be comfortable with who you are And I think that that can be an excellent example for what masculinity can be, right? There shouldn't really be anything that defines what makes you more masculine or what doesn't make you more masculine.
Amazing. Thank you, Aaron. David, over to you.
For sure. Thanks a lot, Zoe. Yeah, so I think a campaign like this, it is the first step. The first step is introspection. The first step is really asking the questions, what's this thing that we call gender, right? And for those who are male identifying, it might look like asking, do I really have to be aggressive, stoic, non-emotional? Do I have to really stick to those scripts that change so much with culture, with time, with geography and location? And what's the version of myself that I want to build and create for my own life, right? Because after all, we were able to author our own identities and the way we navigate the world. So that's I think the beginning. And I think that a next step for anyone engaged in the conversation is action and advocacy. And I think it's a really important time to be doing that and having those conversations. In Ontario, across Canada, across the globe, we're seeing a rise in sexism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia. This can show up as in our communities as online sexual exploitation, sex trafficking, intimate partner violence, discrimination, and we know that some communities are more vulnerable than others. And so it's about having that conversation about masculinity, but it's also about the things that we can do as men to stop those issues, right? Let's have a conversation on the rise of femicide. Let's have a conversation on the role that men and boys can play in stopping that. Let's have a conversation on all of the online content that Ajay was mentioning that promotes hatred towards women, towards different communities, that promotes this idea of hypermasculinity. Let's have the conversation. Let's speak up against it, and let's actively demonstrate our allyship, right? And this can look like a conversation. This can look like sharing a link to the campaign, like so many of you in the audience have shared of doing already. And this can look like reaching out to us and saying, hey, I want to be part of this, and what can I do, right? I think there will always be an answer, and we're always happy to have more people join us and participate in our work.
Amazing. Well said. Thank you so much, David. Abraham, any kind of final thoughts or calls to action from you?
Thanks, Zoe. And super hard to follow David's answer, and I don't want to repeat the same thing. So I'm gonna focus on the some of the steps people can take in their everyday lives to prevent gender-based violence. And I think every small action counts, and I don't think we or I or me in this case I'm asking for a lot. It's just ask these allies to be open and promote open conversations about emotions, for example, and just being vulnerable or just to have emotions sometimes can feel not socially acceptable for some reason for men. So just being open about having conversations about emotions, and also calling out on harmful behaviors, or even just showing empathy in your daily interactions. And like I said, those very small actions are important, and having them in your on your day-to-day, on your everyday interactions, I think it's they are important. And once again, every small action counts. Thanks.
Thank you, Abraham. Yes, very, very true, right? We always say, especially with our young people, it doesn't take a grand gesture. It's just the see every day, the small things that really add up and make a difference as well. So everyone can, everyone has a role to play when it comes to preventing gender-based violence. And Ajay, over to you for any final kind of thoughts or calls to action.
Yeah, I think two things come to mind. The first one is diversify the different, what's the word? Versions or performance, different types of masculinity that you have or that young folks have around them. Particularly thinking about men, and reason being is when we see different men acting, behaving, being role models in different ways, it opens up that conversation that we can also be that way, right? Or show up in those ways. So I think diversifying the different types of people that we have around us, I think is really important. And then the second one that I'm thinking about is building a really good community of support, right? And that meaning that you have people around you that are gonna say, hey, you said that last week, or you said that yesterday, you said that this morning, and like I don't know if that was the right thing to say, or you could have reframed it differently, or right, here's another perspective, right? So I think those are the two things that off the top of my head is coming to me, just diversifying the people that we have around us and making sure that people, the community that we create, the community that we have, is gonna hold us accountable, is gonna push us to be better, and is gonna allow us to be ourselves fully and authentically.
Thank you so much, Ajay. And thank you, all of you. So my final question, and it's just a quick one, and it's also a question for everyone in the audience as well. So please share your answers in the chat. But what is your favorite flower?
I can jump in here, right? My favorite flower would be a dandelion. It's simple, it's beautiful, comes around once a year, and it evolves into something even cooler, and eventually it just floats away.
I love that answer. I'll go with tulips, for sure.
I don't think I had a favorite flower until now, but I'm gonna go with roses. I am an absolute romantic. Roses are gorgeous, and so yeah, that's my answer.
I don't necessarily have one. So it's funny because we had this conversation on set, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go take away. This is another homework I'm gonna take away to figure out. So I don't necessarily have one, but I'm gonna find one.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm loving seeing everyone's answers in the chat. My favorite flower, peonies, they're beautiful. So keep sharing your favorite flowers. I love to see it. Thank you to our panelists for joining us today and having this important conversation, for showcasing our campaign, but for talking about the deeper messages behind it. I appreciate your time. So we are going to now jump into our Q&A section. So we'll grab some of the Q&As from the audience. We'll all open them up for kind of everyone to join as well. So if you feel like you want to answer any of those questions, please feel free to do so. I think this is a kind of a question to the audience as a whole. So also, audience, please feel free to answer this. I think it's going to be less so for our panelists, but someone is interested in knowing about how people first heard of the White Ribbon campaign, and so what are the different ways in which you've come across that. So feel free to share that. So the next question, reflecting on your experience with this project, what impact do you think flowers as a symbol have on changing perceptions of men and emotional openness? If anyone wants to jump in and answer that.
I can. Like I said, one of the things I learned so much about while working on this was flowers, but I think flowers work perfectly for this campaign specifically because they come in all shapes, sizes, kinds. Something that you might not be considering a flower is actually classified as a flower, and even vice versa. And I think if you're worried about flowers becoming a symbol for, what masculinity could represent, I think that there's a whole world of flowers out there. And I think it was just the perfect symbol to be able to really highlight the conversation around stereotypes and everything. I think in terms of what might be considered a more masculine flower, just by, I would say technical definition, thistles. Thistles are beautiful. And yet they have this really cool Gothic look to them.
Amazing. Thank you, Aaron. Anyone else want to add or anything, any of our other panelists?
I can jump in here. I think the first thing that came to my mind was some of the experiences, especially the past summer. I have a 2-year-old, and one of the things that I love to do with him is when we go around, when we walk around in any neighborhood, any park, if we see a flower, I always encourage him to smell the flower, right? And I think that that's one of the things when I think about flowers and masculinity, as young men and boys, we could do that when we were younger, right? We can smell a flower, we can interact, we can say, "Oh, this is beautiful, that's beautiful," right? And as we grow up, because of those rigid stereotypes, those gender norms, we oftentimes move away from those things, right? So I think when you going back or connecting it back to how we can be our authentic self, is to try to find ways to break down those stereotypes, right? Those gender norms and expectations. So if men are able to be more vulnerable, move away from those stereotypes, like right, we're creating that space where we can move away from and talk more about how men can be allies and how men can support it in ending GBV or gender-based violence, as well as open up the conversation for talking about like online sex or exploitation.
Thank you, Ajay. Abraham, please go ahead.
Thanks, Zoe. In this project, I learned that flowers can have a huge impact on how people think about men and emotions. I think typically flowers are used to show, like we learned in the in the video we presented earlier, to show love or kindness and we care for someone. But often people relate or think of this words or feelings as something feminine or as something that is just for women. And us, when we gave flowers to men, I think we challenged these ideas that men shouldn't be open to get to be open with their feelings, and in this case also get flowers. And also we are challenging that men are not supposed to show their emotions or being vulnerable, so those things as well. And so for me, receiving those flowers during the campaign, as I said before, I felt surprised, but I also felt special because it's like we also saw in those videos. It's something that doesn't happen so super often. So I also felt a special moment. So yeah, those are that's my take on the question.
Thank you, Abraham. Yeah, I think also seeing the reactions to the speakers, right, and their emotions in receiving the flowers really helps open that up as well. David, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I really like that idea of thinking of the symbolism of flowers. And I want to pick up on something that was said on the comments, that the campaign reminded them of the flower power era. And it's a good reminder that flowers have meant different things across the decades, right? And back in the 60s, during war times, flowers meant peace, and flowers meant change, and flowers meant really connecting with our humanity and committing to nonviolence. And I think that as an organization, that's what flowers is meaning to us right now. And I'm thinking that maybe we should use flowers more often in all of our activities.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Great, thank you. Thank you for answering that question. Moving on to one of our next questions. So what strategies are you using to reach youth and young men in this campaign? So I can briefly speak to this, beyond just our regular marketing strategies, which I will send over to David after to talk a little bit about that. Ajay and I do a lot of work with young people, with young men and boys through many of our programs at White Ribbon. So do a lot of the White Ribbon staff. So using this video within, those workshops or those conversations as that starting point, I think is a great strategy to kind of, get this in front of young men and boys and to have and start those conversations. So it's really just about sharing it and making space to continue the conversation after sharing this as well, and making sure there is a space to have that conversation on top of that. So I think this will be, moving forward, a really great tool for White Ribbon and for partners to start thinking about those conversations and how to have them and how to set the stage and talk about this campaign and what it means. David, anything to add from your end?
No, I think I would just say that of course we have our strategy and we're reaching youth through paid ads on social media, leading leading them to our website, our channels, where they can find a lot more resources on healthy masculinity. Something that I'm going to say about our campaigns is that very often in the comment section of our posts, you'll find a lot of conversation about the topics that we're bringing forward. And this campaign has brought up a lot of good chats among folks from across Canada, just thinking about the meaning of flowers, right? So that's really what we want. It is the first step that we were talking about in the campaign, and we're happy to see the very positive reactions from the public, especially from youth.
Amazing, thank you, David. Abraham, did you want to add or?
Well, I had my hands up, but then I lowered it because David covered everything on the marketing side. But I'm gonna use this time to invite everyone on on this event to follow us on social media, so they can, because I was going to say the same thing. We are not just paying ads, but also like organically posting this campaign and other campaigns on our social media. So make sure to follow us and like also engage on our posts. So thanks, David and Zoe, for asking the question.
Absolutely. So just gonna ask a couple more questions. So what do you think about the role of art and visual storytelling in challenging traditional ideas of masculinity? How can visual media influence social norms? That's a pretty big question, but yeah, what are people's thoughts on that?
I can jump in here. Yeah, I think storytelling has been such a big part of human history and what we yearn for, and in the connections we make daily, we're always looking to learn more about things. And I think on a visual level, especially for video, video is such an important tool for today, where you're able to say so much more in a shorter period of time just through visuals. And I think this also ties into the choice to use flowers, right? Flowers as a symbol has so much beauty to it and so much meaning, and we've attached so much meaning to it as demonstrated by our speakers within the video. And I think that having something as beautiful and unique as the flower really conceptually gets us to stop and think and see that visual and go, why have I always associated this as being maybe a symbol for femininity, right? It can be universal, as it was mentioned in the video. Gender shouldn't have anything to do with what a flower represents. And I think that's one of the key reasons why visuals play a heavy hand here and really get us to instantly challenge that idea of what a flower really means.
Amazing. Thank you, Erin. Anyone else want to jump in on answering that?
Yeah, I want to jump in here, connecting to what Aaron mentioned. When he said that, the first thing I remembered from the campaign video was Abraham, like his whole, like when he said, like, how does gender has to play a role here, you know? And the visual perception of him saying that, and like I felt that, you know what I'm saying? Like when I saw that, like it was very authentic, genuine, in the sense of like the expression, like seeing that expression, like sparked like sparked something in me, if not using the right words. And then the second thing that I wanted to add was the piece around storytelling, right? One of the main things that we do in our work is to especially when we have smaller, more intimate audiences, is to touching and tap into that storytelling, right? And is sharing our stories, hearing the stories of the people, that the young men that we're working with, right? And storytelling just in our workshops alone is one of the key ways that we reach youth, right? We share ourselves, and they share themselves, and we make that connection, we bridge that gap, and we find that middle ground to kind of grow, and build something really, really beautiful. So
Yeah, thank you both. David, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was just reflecting on the importance of storytelling, and when I think of stereotypes and gender expectations, I feel like storytelling is on the other side of the spectrum. Gender expectations and stereotypes are very idealized ways of looking at something, right? And they are so idealized that no one really can say, I am a real man following all of the stereotypes of manhood, because that's unattainable, right? And that's something that we speak about often in our workshops. Staying within those boundaries of the mandates of masculinity is very not only impossible, but it also cuts our humanity so short. And so when we add the element of storytelling, we are bringing reality into those ideals. We're bringing truth into dreams and unattainable versions, right? We are adding lived experiences. We're adding a very human element to how we navigate the world. And so by telling our own stories on how we navigate those expectations, how our lives unfold in comparison to what's expected from us, I think we bring extremely valuable lessons to people around us, and it gives us, I think, something a lot more tangible to work with, as opposed to expectations and rigid gender norms.
Go ahead, Abraham.
Thanks. I didn't want to be the only one out on this question. So I'm just going to add about how visual media can influence social norms. And like, first of all, visual media can reach many people at once and super quickly. And this is especially for young people. So that's the most basic and quick answer on that. But also when with they I mean young people see these ideas in video or posts, like in social media, it can help change social norms. For example, when on this campaign, when seeing men openly receiving flowers or talking about feelings and how receiving flowers makes them feel, I think, and looking and making that look like normal as it is, I think it can totally help change social norms. So in this way, I think we can inspire others to be more open and break those ideas or stereotypes that can sometimes limit how men can express express themselves. Thanks.
Thank you, Abraham. Yeah, thank you, everyone. And just, thinking about the role of storytelling, I also just want to thank all the audience members who have been sharing some of their stories throughout this event as well. And I've seen, I've had a chance to read a couple of them, and some of them are such beautiful stories, around flowers or around these conversations and this vulnerability. So thank you to the audience as well for sharing your stories, because that's, again, how we continue to have these conversations. So next question is, were there any surprises or interesting moments on set that you witnessed among the participants or the production?
If I could jump in. You know what, that day, it seemed like a blur, but at the end of the day, the one thing that I really knew was that it was a good day, and it didn't matter what was spoken about. You'll see in a lot of the social clips that will be posted additionally, is that we captured very personal stories from each speaker that they share, and there was some tough conversations, there was some easier conversations, but it felt very therapeutic and cathartic to have those conversations with everyone. And that's the one thing that I can really say about the day itself when we filmed, is that at the end of the day, I felt whole. I felt complete, and it didn't matter that it took us months to get to that specific day to film, right? The only thing that I can tell you is that I walked away with this high, knowing that we started in one specific space and were able to branch out and have these conversations more and spur further conversations. So it was just, it was a very fulfilling day.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Aaron. Anyone else? Any kind of surprises or interesting moments?
So I already shared one with Abraham and the flower. Something that also made me feel extremely good was really the reaction from the Candy Box team, right? We hired Candy Box as an agency to help us through this concept and to create the concept itself, right? But something that I was pleasantly surprised by was how excited the entire team was about this campaign, just interacting with some of the team members during lunch time with Aaron, with the crew behind these scenes. It was clear that change was already happening, because we were having those conversations, and you folks were bringing the conversations back at home and then reporting back to us, like, my family is thinking this and my partner is thinking this, and we're all having these conversations, and it just felt so great. It was an amazing interaction and an amazing learning experience of how something small again can become exponentially big and lead to a lot of change.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, David. I think, even thinking it wasn't really surprising, but maybe more heartwarming was just how much our speakers shared and spoke to those challenges around, dealing with these stereotypes and how open and vulnerable so many of them were. And it was just, it's what made the campaign so powerful. So, like, again, a big shout out to the speakers who participated and shared their stories. But I think that was like, to be sitting in the sound booth, just like listening to them share those stories was like so powerful in that moment, right? And just being able to be a part of that was really, really cool. And to hear these men open up and share their stories and their thoughts around that was really awesome. And I really appreciated that. And I thought that was like, again, not surprising knowing that the speakers that we had, but it's always nice to see when that comes to fruition as well. Great. So I have 2 more questions for the group, and then we will start to wrap up and finalize our event for today. So one of the last questions and this is a great question, what are some ways that people in their everyday lives can support men in feeling comfortable with vulnerability? Give everyone a minute to think on that, and then when you're ready, please feel free to answer.
Yeah. So I think, as I mentioned before, one of the best things you can do is really just be empathetic to a person and to listen, especially if somebody takes the time to share something with you or have a conversation with you. But other than that, it really just comes from being somebody who just observes and thinks about the small ways that they can make other people feel comfortable. Gifting flowers to a person can bring up a lot of emotions and things that maybe you didn't know about that person and everything. And if you find that maybe it's a person that may not be approachable to give flowers to, right? It doesn't just have to be flowers. It can be something else that just shows that you really appreciate them for what they stand for, what they do, who they are, and that you want to share that gratitude.
Amazing. Thank you, Aaron. Abraham, go ahead.
Thank you, Zoe. Yes, I agree with Aaron on this. It is important to listen, but I think it's also important to ask, because ask and then listen, because then I think most of us, when we ask someone, how are you, or like and you don't have to be like a friend, like someone when you go to get groceries and you ask the cashier how is their day doing, like most of the time we expect oh, good, thank you, and move on with our lives. But once in a while, I think it's important to ask and actually care about the answer, because at least on my side, sometimes, not always, I try to answer honestly, like honestly, I don't feel good, thank you, all the time. So I find odd when someone asks me about my day, or how am I, and don't want to deal with the answer. So yes, I agree with Aaron 100%. It's important to listen, but it's also important to ask, but honestly ask if you want to know how someone is feeling, or if you want to get like a more honest, and in this case, like vulnerable kind of question, or I'm sorry, answer. So yeah, that's my take on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Abraham. Any other thoughts, David? So you reaching for your mute.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I would like to think about the concept of emotional labor. And there are so many articles out there that cover how a lot of that labor is put on women very often in families, in relationships. And I would like to challenge and invite men to open up a space and open up this and create skills in themselves to lead that emotional labor with other men, right? That means being able to, as others shared, listen, speak, role model those qualities of vulnerability. Um, I think that it's not only something that we need, but it's only fair that we start taking on that labor. But that doesn't mean that it has to be something difficult. I think that again, just showing up to our friends, to our male identifying family members, perhaps like giving them flowers, or as Aaron mentioned, like any other gift, or opening up a conversation about their feelings, or us role modeling that opening up can make a big difference. And I think it's a process that yeah, I think we want to promote more. And well, I yeah, I think now I have more ideas for future projects, because this is an ongoing conversation, and this is something that we really have to work on. But I think that's the beginning. Just being more mindful of who takes on that labor in our society, and being willing and open to also doing some of that emotional work ourselves.
I think that's a really good point, David. Thank you for bringing that up. And I think in kind of conjunction with that too is thinking about, you know, and what Abraham was saying is we don't need to wait to ask someone if they're okay. For we see it when there's like a major life event or, you know, something challenging that we know is challenging to deal with, but, you know, checking in more often, right? Again, creating that space and normalizing that vulnerability, especially men between other men as well, right? And opening up that to check in on your friends, you know, just because, and to role model that behavior so that they can feel like they can be more vulnerable. And that leads us kind of into this last question. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ajay.
Before you jump, just adding on to what you kind of both just mentioned, because I think it's really key. Is that sometimes we also, in terms of that role modeling, right, is opening up to our friends, right? Because sometimes the idea that talking to other men is very like taboo, and if we do, like, we're gonna get judged, they're gonna see us in a different way. But oftentimes, like, other men want that connection, they want to have those conversations, right? So role modeling it in a sense of like we can, and it's okay to have those difficult conversations with our male friends.
Yeah, thank you, Ajay. And so this is really great segue into the last question, which is what role do you think men's mental health plays when it comes to shaping healthier ideas of masculinity? How do you think this campaign supports this as well?
I think just telling people it's okay to talk. And this goes into all the great answers that we just heard from about, connecting with people and listening and being empathetic. And I even saw in the chat, emotional intelligence. I think that's really key. And I think the more we're willing to talk about these things and, push past the noise we see online, the things that tell you, oh, men have to be a certain way. This is your role, this is your responsibility. I think the more we step away from that and we listen and we talk and we truly embrace each other and we really connect with each other just as people, that's what's going to help us step towards, I would say, healthier role models for young men growing up, and really promoting more healthy looks at what masculinity can be.
Thank you, Aaron.
I totally agree. So this is my last rant, or where we go, but I think it's really important to, like Aaron saying, break down those stereotypes, because one of the things that we see and we know is that men are struggling with their mental health across the board, right? And because of those gender stereotypes, because of those idea that because we're men, we can't access these resources, men have the highest rates of suicide across Canada, right? So thinking about how these ideas, like just a small campaign like this, can open up that conversation to rethinking how we access resource, rethinking how we think about masculinity, I think is really key in the conversation.
Thank you, Ajay. Any other final thoughts?
I think just that we want the conversations. We want the to create the cultural space for men to find their own unique selves, and I think this campaign does that really.
Amazing, thank you, David. And so that wraps up our Q&A portion question. If you shared questions in the Q&A and we didn't get to them, we will look to answer those directly to you. We have taken note of them. Also, if you have more questions or questions come up beyond the event today, please don't hesitate to reach out to White Ribbon, and we're happy to continue these conversations, around healthy masculinity, around gender norms and expectations, gifting flowers, and how that all ties together. So thank you again to Aaron, David, Abraham, and Ajay for being a part of the panel and answering all of those questions. And thank you all for joining. I'm going to pass it over to Ajay for our final closing remarks. And yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, Zoya, just same. Really wanted to say thank you, folks, for being here, participating, the questions, the comments, all of it has been really wonderful. And we look forward to kind of continuing this conversation around one, creating a space where men can be their authentic selves. So we're thinking about challenging healthy thinking about promoting more version of healthy masculinity and allyship. And like Abraham did that like soft plug in the beginning. It's to think about continuing our work or continuing this work. So follow us on social media, reach out to us. Like we want to have these conversations. One of the great things that we've been doing, Zoe and I've been doing the last little while, is partnerships, right? So we want to have these partnerships. So if you have work that you've been doing, if you have work that you're looking to do, we're here to support you in creating that space or support you in having those conversations, or continuing those conversations. So really want to encourage you to reach out to us, to follow us on social media, and we look forward to the next event, whether it's ours or yours. Let us know, and we'll be there. Thank you. All right, and we'll see you later. Bye.